Does anyone remember the movie Hercules? No, not that one. The one with the songs. It's about the son of Zeus who's living the high life until he's stolen and given bad guy juice that makes him lose his godhood status. So he spends the rest of the movie proving himself as a hero, saving the world and whatnot. But at the end, when he has finally attained his godhood once more, he denies it so he can go live on Earth with Meg. So, why did I just explain all of this? Well, I think the story fits perfectly with Masahiro Sakurai. This man has spent his entire life proving himself time and time again, with games that constantly change the standard. Yet despite that, he decides to remain here on Earth. But instead of living happily ever after with an animated twig lady, he's stuck here forever bound to Smash Bros. And a horde of rabid neckbeards. Don't get me wrong, he's still doing amazing work. God knows I damn near pissed myself when Banjo came out. Yeah, boy! But many millennia ago, there was a small period between Brawl and Wii U where he finally got a chance to spread his wings and give us something quite unexpected. Icarus Uprising is an unruly titan of a video game that constantly bends your expectations. Whether it's the seamless fusion of genres or the unique use of gameplay mechanics, it's always got a few aces up its sleeve. But the biggest surprise of all is that it's a Nintendo game with an actual plot and fun characters. What? Never heard of such a thing. So much crazy shit happens in the story that the whole thing can literally be divided into arcs. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't played it yet, so I'll just show you these poorly photoshopped images that are out of context. Something I can talk about though is all the fun characters you meet on your journey. A majority of these characters are simple stereotypes, with no character going through any drastic change, but the writing is so full of humor and charm that it uplifts the interactions from being shallow, dull conversations. The game also enjoys completely shattering the fourth wall to the point where there's not even a wall anymore. It just got up and left. And sometimes I feel like they do this a little too much. Not just with the fourth wall breaks, but it can feel like the characters just constantly make too many jokes or talk endlessly. But usually it goes by so quick that it gets tossed by the wayside. One thing I'm never gonna forget, nor forgive them for, is that shitty Wikipedia joke.
Man, is that guy obsessed with the arm or what? He sure knows a lot about them.
That's because I spent a lot of time on Divinipedia.
Divinipedia? Send me the link.
Ugh. Every time I hear that, an angel loses its wings. Horrible jokes aside, the game has these conversations reside at the bottom screen as you're playing, and the gameplay is where things get more interesting. Each level follows a 3-step structure that divides the gameplay into 2 genres. The first part are the flight sections, which are a blend between an on-rail shooter and a shoot-'em-up. Basically, you just blaze down enemies while being guided on an automatic path. Every now and then the path splits and you can choose whether you get baby fun times or become chicken dinner. Usually I don't talk about the actual controls for a game, but Kid Icarus has an unusual control scheme that has created a lot of division between people.
Now everyone says, oh well, it's auto fire so it won't cause your hand to cramp. They're full of crap.
You use the circle pad to move around the screen and hold the L button to shoot. Then you use the stylus to aim the reticle, so all the support is dependent on your left hand. I personally didn't find this too troublesome and typically just rested my DS on my leg while playing. Anyway, even if the paths are automatic, you still need to move around constantly to dodge incoming fire. And trust me, you'll be circulating that circle pad like there's no goddamn tomorrow. Things can get pretty hectic if you're not on your toes. And since you only have so much room to avoid all the incoming fire, these can be some of the more difficult parts of the game. Thankfully, if things get too chaotic, you can use the blue orbs that clear the screen of filth. These are really fun though, and don't overstay their welcome, only lasting 5 minutes at most. The second genre, and the most prevalent throughout the game, are the land sections. The game switches to a third-person shooter, and here, your weapon selection becomes much more relevant, and by God, there is a motherload to choose from. There are 9 different weapon classes, each one having a unique way of attacking. You got stuff like blades that are the all-around weapons, clubs that have great melee but terrible range, staffs which have amazing range but a slow fire rate, and if you're having trouble finding a weapon you actually like, you can fuse just about any weapon together to create something entirely different. Aside from weapons, you can also equip a limited amount of powers on this chart. You got basic things such as healing abilities, and then crazy shit like like summoning an actual laser. But the more outrageous the ability is, the harder it will be to fit on the board, so you need to pick and choose wisely. Anyway, with the capability to roam in full 3D, the shooting now works a lot differently. The most common way to shoot is to dash either forward, backward, or to the sides, each one having its own range and effect. You can also wait for the reticle to charge, which lets you shoot a more powerful shot. All of these moves slowly drain your stamina along with running and dodging, which can leave you out of breath, making you vulnerable for a couple seconds. So you need to be careful when frequently flinging yourself all over the place. A way to attack enemies that saves on stamina is to melee them. Close combat requires more precise dodging, though that can be finicky sometimes because it'll dodge you right back into the attack, which has been the cause of countless deaths. Maybe I'm just really bad at it, I don't know. But dodging or not, you'll be doing a lot of moving, and this might be the reason I had some mild hand cramps during these parts. It was nothing too irritating though, I usually just needed a break for a couple minutes. But a lot of people blame the controls on these, so this might make or break your experience, depending on how frail your hands are. But this constant movement is due to the frequent horde of enemies that keep you on your toes. In flight parts, most enemies just shoot at you, but once you set foot on the ground, they become much more versatile. Every enemy has a fun, recognizable design that communicates to the player what its deal is. Top part of the totem isn't shooting a beam, headshot the bastard. A Grim Reaper that slowly walks around with laser vision? Yeah, I don't know, just hit it I guess? Okay, bad idea, bad idea. It's shocking how diverse the lineup is without any feeling too similar to each other, making the levels they populate far more memorable. You'll explore many imaginative locations, like luminescent towers, nature-infested facilities, and a space pirate ship that gets taken over by a space kraken. I told you that this game gets wild. The levels house a simple yet enjoyable layout, are filled with action-packed duels and gameplay elements that keep things interesting. Stuff like ground rails and the batch of sparingly used vehicles are nice additions to spice things up. Or if the story demands it, the actual structure of a level can be completely different, like a level that is all in flight, or another one where you play as a character that can only melee. All these small twists are what make this game stand out from being some generic shooter. One of the weaker aspects though are the boss fights, which show up at the end of each level. They're not dreadful, nor are they the best boss fights in gaming history. Many of them resort to spraying projectiles at you, turning it into a sort of bullet hell. While it does add a decent amount of challenge, the bosses end up being more memorable for their characters and less for their actual fights. Some of these types of bosses can be good, but the best ones change up how you attack them, or are less reliant on projectiles. Another problem that affects the bosses and the entire game is how difficulty is handled. Throughout the game, you'll collect a bunch of these hearts that can be used to buy weapons or give offerings. But good weapons are too expensive and offerings do quite literally nothing, so the main use of them is on this cauldron. Before the start of any level, you'll have the option to choose your difficulty. The harder you want it, the more hearts you gotta spend. Same thing applies if you want it easier than a Kirby game. All this seems fine and dandy until you meet a fatal end and see this. With the difficulty now bumped down a significant amount, it makes any struggle you previously had a cakewalk, especially the boss fights. This can take out a lot of fun from the game when you're trying to challenge yourself. I wish it either dropped down the difficulty by less, or it gave you the option to sacrifice some hearts to get it back to where it was. It's just super frustrating to get through a whole level to only die at the boss, and the game automatically making it easier, instead of giving me a chance to learn from my mistake and earn a proper victory. For better or for worse, Icarus Uprising is an experience unlike no other, and is especially impressive for a handheld game. There is so much effort poured into this game, I had to leave some stuff out and talk mostly about the main game to prevent this video from being stupidly long. Stuff like the game's many story arcs, the multiplayer mode, and the hundreds of rewards and achievements for playing the game longer than its initial runtime. And if you're really willing to dive into its core, I think you'll find one of the most enthralling and adventurous games on the 3DS. And we're never getting another game like it for a long while. So see you in 25 years!